I'm Jill Savage, joined as always by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
Another beautiful day in Dallas, and we're going to talk about the good stuff today.
We are. It's not the good stuff always to Chris Bedford, but he is our DC politics editor. Just pretend like we're not going to talk about Epstein here for a minute, Chris.
Oh, I know we're going to talk about Epstein. You love talking about Epstein. And you know what? I'm here for it.
But you know what? We're going to talk about Epstein because JD Vance was talking about Epstein, and he did so in a way that we love. It's a way that Vance showcases why he is the future leader of the Republican Party.
There's an interesting thing about this case that the American media seems to totally ignore. For 4 years, under Joe Biden's Department of Justice, the media didn't give a damn about the Epstein files or about the Epstein case. For literally 20 years, the story about this scumbag, and he is a scumbag pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, he's dead now, but for 20 years, you had Obama and George W. Bush's Department of Justice go easy on this guy. They didn't fully investigate the case. They didn't show any curiosity about the case. And now Donald J. Trump is asking his Department of Justice to show full transparency. And somehow that's a criticism of Donald J. Trump and not Barack Obama and George W. Bush.
I think this framing from JD Vance, we all know, yes, did they screw up with the rollout of the Epstein documents? Sure. We've seen this multiple times now by the Trump administration. Let's acknowledge that first and now say JD Vance, the way that he is framing this, right? We always say the Republicans have problems with messaging. He's actually going through and turning this back on the establishment because this isn't something that has just come up in the last 6 months, you guys. This is something that has been going on for years and years and years. And Matt, the way that he went through and actually rightfully so put some blame on even W. Bush and Obama, it's not just a Trump issue.
Yeah, well, what happened here is that the right or the Bondi, DOJ sort of came out and then balked a little bit, and there was a pause, right? And so like they threw a punch, but it was sort of a half-hearted punch, and that got the left excited. So the Democrats all of a sudden thought, oh, we finally have something. It took them a while. We finally have something to go after, Trump on, and you were hiding your own crimes with Epstein, and you're distracting from Epstein. And then, this was like the uppercut, just right to the chin, saying, wait a minute, you guys want to talk about Epstein? You didn't want to talk about Epstein for years. We actually are. You can screw off. So very powerful turn of the frame.
Yeah, and you can see the media doesn't care about justice, Chris. They care about going through and actually trying to use this Epstein stuff against Donald Trump and the administration.
Yes, they never did. They don't care about transparency. They don't care about justice. They didn't care about this case until it was a convenient cudgel by Democrats. And Democrats have only been successful in making this such an excellent cudgel against the president because of the expectations that were massively inflated by some of the influencers who are now in positions of power in Washington, D.C., sometimes pushed by President Trump himself. And then, honestly, there was press conferences and questions that President Trump answered where he might as well have rented one of those little airplanes that pull a banner that say, "You're getting under my skin, please keep going." Because she showed that it clearly irritated him. And of course it did, because this was the 6-month anniversary of the most impactful domestic presidency since FDR, at least as far as I can tell in this country. And people were talking about Epstein instead. So it really bothered him. But if you do, just all you have to do with this whole case is take a step back like Vice President Vance did, and he does so well in a lot of different places, and President Trump was getting towards, and I think has arrived at, and say, guys, this really, truly, deeply, everyone knows it, from the Washington Post to whoever, everyone except for the Wall Street Journal, apparently, is not our scandal. We're not hiding stuff here. There's no thing that's going to make you feel better. And this is a problem that has gone on for Democrats. It's gone on for Republicans. It's gone on for the elites. It's gone on for the administration. It's happened down in Florida. It's happened internationally. You could keep going and going and going. And that's what JD Vance did so masterfully. And, he's kind of kept a low profile as vice president in some ways. He hasn't been saddled with these really stupid suicidal jobs that Joe Biden kept on kind of having a little grin when his staff gave those to Kamala Harris to shut her up and keep her ambitions down. Instead, he's kind of gone around and tossed the red meat, but also done so in a very artful and very persuasive manner. Talked about things that matter to conservatives, been an emissary through this whole thing, from the start of Epstein through the Elon Musk fight, through all the other little blips and blurps that have come up in this administration, been an emissary to the American right and shown that he's someone who can be trusted by this administration, is not going to step out of his place or out of his role and tick off the president, and at the same time can be very useful.
Yeah, you say that JD Vance has kept a low profile. Matt always says you can't go so close to the sun. You have to go and let Donald Trump be Donald Trump, Matt.
Yeah, and this is wise because, in the beginning of the administration, it was incredible. It was like the super friends all together, seeing Marco Rubio and JD Vance being so active in the administration. But ultimately, you need to find your own lane and let Trump be Trump. And so you see Vance here, like he was away for a while. He kind of was quiet for a while, and then he comes out swinging. And that's just a great role for him. It's a perfect role for him where I'm sure he's doing all kinds of things behind the scenes, but he doesn't have, as Chris is saying, these sort of fake and performative tasks that they'll give vice presidents, like your job will be the czar of whatever. And so JD's been able to stay JD and come out there and articulate, and that's what he did last night.
Kamala Harris, the border czar, don't forget it. But JD Vance last night was...
Joe Biden is in charge of solving cancer.
He was definitely going to solve cancer. But they did let JD out. He was speaking last night brilliantly, as he usually does. He was talking about H-1B visas and how they're actually being abused to replace American workers and suppress wages. Take a look.
You see some big tech companies where they'll lay off 9,000 workers and then they'll apply for a bunch of overseas visas. And I sort of wonder, that doesn't totally make sense to me.
The math doesn't.
That displacement and that math worries me a bit. And what the president has said, he said very clearly, we want the very best and the brightest to make America their home. We want them to build great companies and so forth. But I don't want companies to fire 9,000 American workers and then to go and say, we can't find workers here in America. That's a bull story.
Yeah, and he's laying it out exactly like it is, Chris. When you look at H-1B visas, they were supposed to be, what we were told, is that they were going to be the rare skilled workers that we just couldn't find here in America. It was a loophole, and it is completely being exploited right now.
Oh, it's all a lie. It's always been a lie. Just think about it. Our friends and our parents and their friends, all of them have stories, either about themselves or about their siblings or about their cousins or about their neighbors, having to go through the incredible indignity of coming to work to train your foreign replacements. I mean, I know a guy who graduated, I used to be roommates with him, graduated college with me, whose job was to train Indians to do the work that his colleagues were doing. He wasn't very popular amongst his colleagues, but he's one of the few who actually survived, who was born in the United States and kept his job. This whole thing has always been a lie. And, there's kind of a sick history of this in the United States that goes back generations it goes back to the founding, it goes back before the founding of the extremely wealthy people in the United States not wanting to pay the people who live in this country and coming up with any scheme they possibly can, from borrowing laborers from the Chinese to stealing them from Africa to importing them from Mexico to importing them from, now we're all over the planet, to work in these jobs, and all in the name of, listen, we don't want to pay you. We don't want to pay you. And it's always been a destabilizing force in the country. It's always been a stain in our history. And it's just constant. It's just never stopped. And I know it can be offensive sometimes to compare some of the labor that's going on here to sins of American capitalists in the past. But if you do go back and look at the whole thing, you realize, or if you look at the reports from the police reports from the raids and the slaughterhouses and the raids and the drug farms that are run by cartels, you're finding child labor. You're finding absolutely egregious conditions. You're finding people who are losing limbs in some of these machines, and they don't have any recourse. So that entire thing is being entirely taken advantage of. And that's even part of that story at the beginning. The lead up to the American Civil War, you hear about bloody Kansas and all this fight between the pro-slavers and the anti-slavers. The main fight for the anti-slavers was, I'm not going to come out here and at this farm only to be replaced by slave labor. I need to be paid a full wage. And that was what got them so angry. They weren't social justice warriors per se. They were just trying to feed themselves and their family and take care of things. So this is an age-old conflict, an age-old lie, and I love that finally in my life, the American right is just calling it out and saying, no, no more of this.
Well, you can go all the way back for the sins of an American company, all the way back to the beginning of this month. July 2nd, Microsoft announced a layoff of 9,000 employees in the latest round of cuts. And then on July 3rd, who would have guessed? The next day, Microsoft applies for as many as 6,000 specialized migrant worker visas, Matt. So I don't know. Maybe one story went with the other there.
Yeah, I think they were connected. Not Sherlock Holmes over here, but those were definitely connected. And this is the shameful thing that Chris is talking about. These companies do this all the time. They will fire American workers in favor of cheap labor. The important thing about JD Vance's comments is not just that he said what no one has said in the right in a long time. It's also where he said it. He said it at the Hill and Valley Forum in front of people in tech who are much more, Hill and Valley is more people who are more aligned to the right, or at least like open and not a bunch of wokesters. And he's saying it directly to tech overlords, and they're realizing, if they're on the side of President Trump, that they have to get on board with this and actually start training and hiring American workers. So, he's saying it right to their face, which is extremely important. And when it comes to tech, this is where the excuse always comes in, right? Tech says, well, we don't have enough qualified people because these jobs require, a lot of knowledge and skill that Americans just don't have. But that is the lie that you see people, questioning over and over again today. And this has been a lie for a long time. And of course, the problem is, if we didn't have the skilled workers, then train them here, because we can't have an economy that relies on importing cheap labor from elsewhere. And this has been going on for so long. It's so ingrained in the entire society. The only way to deal with this is to directly call it out, to talk to the businesses themselves. And thank God that's what JD Vance and others are now doing.
Yeah, because Chris, it feels like we've all been lied to, right? People that are our age or younger, we were all taught to, learn to program, learn to code. You're going to have a job forever. Well, you will, until they have to go get an H-1B visa and take your job away and give it to a foreign worker.
Yeah, that'll be some of the first stuff to actually be able to go. They're coming for people in my career field too. The writers are coming for accountants. They're coming for lawyers. They're coming. It's actually, I kind of thought initially that it was the unskilled labor positions that would be in the most danger. You look out the window when you land at the airport and you see the guys whose job it is to avoid danger, stay safe, guide airplanes, load bags, things like that. And why couldn't those things be replaced by robots? But it turns out it's actually a lot easier to replace a mid-level to low-level white-collar job than it is to replace the body functions and the grips and the danger, the thinking and the recognition of danger that you have in a lot of the other labor that you can kind of just learn at being trained on the job. The whole thing is being threatened. And I also this is not just a threat to this is a threat to the United States, but it's also a threat to large parts of the planet that experience an incredible brain drain. You see in the United States where there are beautiful parts of the American country that are losing a lot of their ambitious people to garbage cities that turn them into just mindless drones, as opposed to staying in their home states and actually being contributing to that economy and building families there. Maine, for example, beautiful state of Maine. I think a lot of Blaze staff ended up there over the last holiday. They have a really strong campaign to get people from Maine to please come back to Maine when they start their families. And I know a bunch have taken advantage of it. But there are other countries around the world that are being hammered by this, by the labor that's just leaving, by the labor that's fleeing, that's the labor that's coming here, and all for that.